Secretaría de Educación de Bogotá and the Bilingual District Plan, I would like to welcome you all to this second forum on a session of 3 fora on nurturing reading literacy in second language learners, a sociocultural approach. Today, we are going to focus on reading strategies, on many questions that we have received from different teachers of the city. And we are very happy here today to have our panelists from different places of the world, Milica and Rurik. And I am very happy that all of you are here today with us in this Facebook Live. Remember that we are hosting 3 different sessions, so we welcome you all to these sessions on Tuesdays, 9 a.m. So I would like to also welcome our teachers, our participating teachers in Facebook, and I will leave right now the session to Jamie Herrera, our academic consultant, who will be leading the questions and answers. Okay, so Jamie, thank you and good morning.
Okay, good morning, Marta. Good morning, everyone. We are very happy to have this session today, Nurturing Reading Literacy in Second Language Learners, a Sociocultural Approach. So as you said, Marta, my name is Jamie Herrera. I'm very happy to be here. And I welcome our speakers today. We have 2 very special guests. We have Milica Vukadin from Serbia, and she is holding right now master's degree in early education for childhood. Sorry, I messed it up. It is master's degree in early childhood education and teaching. And she's a teacher training, head of language studies. She's also working with IELTS Center in Nigeria. She's online ESL teacher specialized in working with young learners. And also Milica leads weekly English storytelling and project-based learning program in Serbia. So welcome, Milica. So it is nice to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you for the amazing introduction. I really honestly don't have anything else to add except maybe that I also use a lot of technology in education. So I am ambassador of Edmodo and Genially. And if you have any questions connected to EdTech, you're free to ask them. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Milica. So now we continue with Rory Tawana. He's from the United States of America. He's a recent PhD grad from Georgia State University. He explored strategic reading and inferencing in advanced second language reading comprehension tasks. Also, Rurik has worked as a professor at several universities in the United States and Russia. And also, he's a testing coordinator. So welcome, Rurik.
Thank you. Hello. Buenos dias. Yeah, it's so great to be here. I'm so happy to talk about reading to everyone, especially how to teach reading. It's sort of the gateway to so much knowledge, and it's the best way to create lifelong learners. So I'm really happy to talk about reading with everyone.
Thank you so much, Rurik. Okay, Milica, tell us about your passion for teaching. Why do you love teaching children?
Well, honestly, I've thought a lot about this question, and the only thing that came to my mind is my childhood, because my mother was a preschool teacher. So even when I finished my preschool, I spent all of my time in preschool after school, and I just watched how she interacts with children, and I said, okay, this is what I want to do. Look at these kids. They're so happy. I want to make them happy. And I think ultimately that's what drove me to become a teacher. Yes.
Great. Okay, Rurik, what about reading? Why do you love reading? Why reading is so important for you?
Well, it's a very complex skill, and I think people don't understand how often we read and how many tiny, small skills go into it. And it fascinates me all the different ways we can approach reading and all the different types of reading that we experience every day, from checking emails to reading a novel. It's just such a wide skill that I think is one of the most important, not just language skills, but academic and learning skills that everyone needs to pay more attention to. So.
Thank you. Okay, so Milica and Rurik, let's start from the beginning. Why is reading comprehension important to learn a second language? What do you think, Milica?
Well, personally, without reading and without reading comprehension, there's no actual language learning. So we really need to include reading in all of our activities. Also, we all know that language has 4 skills. So listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And without combining all of them and using the balanced approach, so if you're teaching reading comprehension, you're also going to connect to writing. And it is very important for language development, not only in the second language, but also in the native language. So reading is very important. That's all I have to say to start off this panel.
Okay, Rurik, any other idea?
Sure. It's covered most of it there, but one thing, when you focus on comprehension in reading, so not just sentence reading or word reading, but really focus on the meaning in reading, you are showing your learners that they're moving from learning to read and learning to use language to a new skill, reading to learn. So they're not just learning a new trick in their language skills, they're using their reading to learn new information. So it's unlocking a lot. They have a skill that's going to let them participate in their second language without necessarily having a speaker there all the time. So they have a skill they can use whenever they want. And teaching for comprehension specifically helps encourage independence in our students. It really shows that reading isn't just a classroom tool, it's an everyday tool.
Okay, cool. Now let's continue with the second question. So in this panel, we are talking about a sociocultural approach. So what is sociocultural approach and how can we teach reading comprehension through this approach? Rurik, do you have any idea about this?
Sure. So there are multiple ways and multiple interpretations of the sociocultural approach to teaching. But in very general terms, taking a sociocultural approach to reading means when you look at a text, you know it's not a perfect objective container of meaning. Instead, readers don't just read a text and suck up all the information in the same way. When we read, we don't find meaning in the book. We construct the meaning in our mind. So readers read the information in a text, they get the information from the text, but they also think about what they know about the author and whether they trust the author, and they think about their own background knowledge and their own understanding of culture and the world and logic, and all of their personal experience is activated when they read. So to teach second language reading in a sociocultural framework means understanding each reader has a unique perspective, and the goal is to help them be autonomous, where they can use their own personal knowledge and personal experience to build comprehension from the text. So it's not just finding and absorbing information, it's building new information in your head. So in practical terms, this means encouraging readers to make their own decisions and interpretations about what they find in a text, and focusing on the social purpose of reading. So encouraging lots of discussion about reading, encouraging evaluation, encouraging questions, making sure that readers have a chance to provide their own comments and interpretations.
Okay, great. Milica, What do you think about the sociocultural approach?
Well, I of course agree with everything that Rurik said, but I am observing it from a more from a different point of view, because I'm observing it from Vygotsky's point of view and a child development point of view. So in my classroom, I use this approach to include different backgrounds. So we know that all children come from different backgrounds, they all learn differently. There is no one size fits all. So we can't just assume that all kids have the same backgrounds. And by acknowledging these differences, we encourage them, we make them feel better, we make them feel like they matter. So what I do is use a lot of books from different languages, different cultures, where we can see children of different races, children with unusual families. We know that nowadays we have various kinds of families. Not all children have a regular family. A family also another thing that I do is try to include a lot of kinds of personalities to teach them social emotional learning. And to just give a practical example on this, I started creating my multicultural library. So I have books from Sweden, Russia, Germany, and I think Greece. Yes, I just can't remember all of them. So even if the children cannot read Greek, which of course I can do it, we still have the illustrations in the picture books. We can still analyze it. So we are actually teaching visual literacy, which I think is the first step to reading and literacy in general when you're working with kids in preschool or early elementary. So this is how I use the sociocultural approach.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, let's talk about inferencing. So this is a term that we usually listen to, but we don't really know what's that. So what's inferencing to reading, and should we teach it? Can we teach it at all? What do you think, Milica?
Okay, me again. So when it comes to inferencing, yes, I believe we can teach it, but since I'm focused on young learners and very young learners are children aged from 3 to 6, this changes a lot. So how do we start teaching inferencing with a child in a second language who is 3, 4, 5, or 6 years old? I usually start with naming. After a certain time, we get to describing. And after we manage to do a simple describing, after that, we can just talk about the symbolics. What is happening in the picture? For example, at first, we're going to see a girl eating and she's sad. After some time, we can describe she's sitting in the kitchen, she's eating soup, she's sad. And then when we go to inferencing, we can actually start seeing what is happening. Maybe she doesn't like soup. So I know it sounds very basic, but bear in mind that when you're teaching such young children, you really need to use the scaffolding method. So start from the bottom, and then maybe when we get to Rurik, who is teaching older students, then we can discuss actual real inferencing. So this is just my point of view. I don't know, what does Rurik have to say?
Sure.
Thank you, Milica. Now Rurik.
Yeah. So inferencing is, like you said, it's a word we hear very often when it comes to reading, but it's not always well understood. And part of that is because there's multiple forms that inferencing takes. So in general, the idea of inferencing as a skill is when you read a text, there's certain explicit information in the text. So the words and lines that you see in the text. But not all of the information that you need to understand is in those lines. There are connections between ideas in the text. There are words you have to, even in your first language, infer from the context. So new words that maybe take on a new meaning because the author uses them in a unique way. So you have to infer the meaning of the word from the context. You also can use inferencing when you compare a text to your own personal experience and background knowledge and make a connection. This author thinks I need to know this already. So you make an inference to real world information. And you can also make elaborative inferences, predicting where the text is going to go next. So what does the author want me to know after this? What's the thing that's going to be written next? Or even within a text, how is this going to end? What do I know so far? What does this tell me about the next sentence? So any of these pieces of information that you make yourself as a reader can be part of the inferencing skill. And it draws on a lot of separate skills like logic and critical thinking and background knowledge and ability to remember where information is in a text to go back to it and make connections. So there's multiple small skills that go into it. When it comes to teaching inferencing, I also agree that it's not something to just throw at the students right away. I don't even know if you need to teach about inferencing to students. You don't need to use the word inferencing or try and explain all that. What you should focus on, sort of in the same way that Milica said, focus on questions you can ask people. So for young learners, it may be using mostly pictures and shorter texts, but even later with adult learners, encouraging inferencing comes when you ask lots of questions about a text. So why did the author think this is important? What do you think about this fact from the text? So consider giving your readers lots of questions before and after they read. So what did you know about the topic before reading? Why was this topic important for us and for the writer? What do you want to ask the author about the reading? What do you think the meaning of the word X is in the text? Why did something happen? So that was like Milica said, why is she sad? Now start asking why. So asking these questions that are bigger than the text itself, those questions encourage the skill of inferencing. And so you don't have to teach the skill descriptively. You can teach this skill through this questioning process.
Okay, thank you. Well, now I'm gonna tell you something that probably you don't know, but according to results based on national and international tests, our Colombian students need to improve their reading comprehension skills. That is something that we really want to increase our reading comprehension skills. So could reading in a foreign language, like for example, English, improve reading comprehension skills in our mother tongue, in our case, Spanish? Does literacy transfer happen from a second language to a first language? What do you think, Milica?
Well, I've thought about it a lot, actually, and I noticed that even in my case, because as you already know, I speak a little bit of Spanish. These skills are transferred even from L1 to from L2 to L3 if you're learning multiple languages. So definitely, they are transferable. And I think that Rurik actually answered this question in the beginning because he was talking about. Let me just remember. He was talking about skimming and scanning, I believe. And he said that when we learn certain reading strategies, we use them in other subjects. And this is exactly what happens with the transference in general. So the problem is when you are a native speaker, and this is, I think we can all relate to this, we are not usually taught explicitly to skim and scan. And I believe that that's really useful because when you're not taught to skim and scan, you're doing everything organically, you're doing everything naturally, you just decode the language at a very young age, and you don't think about these skills until you're older when you need to analyze literature. And I believe this is happening in Serbia. I'm not sure what is the situation in Colombia. But if you want to understand, and as Rurik said, engage in some reading comprehension activities, the basic skills are skimming and scanning. So I believe if we start teaching children at a very young age, maybe grade 3, when they become a little bit more fluent readers, they can definitely transfer it to other subjects and study better, and ultimately they can use it throughout the whole education. So 100% yes, it can help and they are transferable.
Okay, great. What about you, Rory? What can you say about that?
Yeah, so at the beginning stages of any skill learning or language learning, we like to talk about transfer and think about how skills from one understanding, one domain are transferred to another. As these skills develop, it's not just moving the skills from one place to another. Really, with something like reading, because it involves strategies and it involves logic and it involves world knowledge, it's not about transferring these from Spanish to English or from English to Spanish. These things exist outside of those languages. So those skills are a big multi-competence that's not stuck in one language. So can you transfer skills from English to Spanish or from Spanish to English? Yes, but it's going to be drawing on these bigger skills that aren't just part of reading. And to see that transfer work, or to see reading in English help reading in Spanish, it's going to come down to the amount of reading that's done. And so activating those skills like skimming or scanning or careful comprehension or questioning, evaluating, think about those skills and not just reading itself. So if students use those skills a lot in their English class and they have an extensive reading program, yeah, if they learn to automatize those skills, like Milica was saying, if they get so good at using those skills that it becomes automatic, then it will also become easier to use in Spanish as well. So if the focus is on reading English as often as possible, using extensive reading and trying to get those reading skills and activation of logic and skimming and scanning and make it automatic in English, it should help in just your approach to understanding texts in whatever language you know. So yeah, I also hypothesize that with sufficient practice in English, you will see gains in Spanish as well.
Okay, thank you both. Now, let me tell you something about our context. Students may have different English levels in the same classroom. That is a very common situation here in Colombia. We don't have different levels. We only have one classroom, and then we have one class for the whole students. So how can we teach reading in multi-level groups, Milica?
Well, this is something that I actually have a lot of experience with. In the beginning, you mentioned my storytelling-based learning program. And in this program, I have children aged from, I think, 5 to 5th grade. So that's a very, very large scale of students. And I think that, yes, we can teach them. How can we teach them? Well, I managed to teach them successfully by using storytelling methodology and a lot of mentoring. So in this case, I actually have a video, so I would like to share it. I will not share the screen, but it is on a post and a link that I will show later. So in this situation, for example, I make sure that everybody feels comfortable. Why? Because in order for mentoring to happen and in order for it to be natural, the children really need to feel safe and they need to feel like they're not pressured, like this is what they want to do. So this is my step number 1. After that, when we start storytelling, usually at this level, we are starting with read alouds. So we first read to students, and then in the end, we can read by, the reading can be by students. But before we get to by, we are doing the read alouds. I start dramatizing. Of course, there are a lot of listening comprehension tasks that I have. And at a certain point, I'm just observing the classroom. After observing the classroom, you can easily see which older child wants to just do something extra. Then what I managed to do is just casually handing out the book. The child takes the book, gets up, and starts reading to everyone. This started happening so naturally, and I believe it's an amazing method to teach reading in multi-level groups. Of course, I'm talking about informal education. So this is happening in informal education, and the basis is storytelling. So after the storytelling, then we focus on reading comprehension. But again, it's a lot of mentoring. So usually it's differentiation. It's the same when you're teaching big groups. So you have to differentiate activities and you have to give the children certain autonomy. You have to give them the choice. You have to make them active participants, and it works. You will see, if you're interested, you can watch this video and you can see the child just taking the book and starting to read. I think it's amazing. It's just an amazing activity.
Okay, Rorik, so what do you think? How can we teach reading in multi-level groups? Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, I'll be kind of quick with this because Militsa's answer was so thorough. And this ties into another issue that might exist when you have very large classes. Having multiple levels of readers can be a benefit, especially if you take, like Militsa mentioned at the beginning, take a Vygotskian approach to this. Having multiple levels means you can have very dynamic pairs and groups of readers, and you want to encourage mentorship between your students. So if you have multiple levels, as long as you, the teacher, know that you have these levels, you can know the best way to group your students and create sort of mentorship groupings in your students, encourage them to teach the way they read or teach other students how they found an answer or found a piece of information. So make it a very dynamic environment where students aren't just reading a book by themselves, but they're also encouraging each other to read and explaining their reading process to each other. So making each student a mentor of another student.
Great, thank you. Well, guys, let me tell you something. This is kind of hard because usually students think reading is a demanding skill to develop. So sometimes they are reluctant to read in English. You're saying that the best way is motivate students, trying to show reading something that is approachable and possible to do. But how can we engage students and raise interest in reading? How can we do it, like in real situation when we have different levels, when our students are not really into reading? So what can you tell us, Rorik?
It's very difficult, I'll say that. So I understand how difficult it is. So motivation is hard to tap into directly. It's hard to just say, here's the strategy to make your students more motivated. It doesn't work that easily. But in general, I find motivation can be raised best when students feel they're in more control of their learning. And when they perceive that a specific classroom task or assignment has more benefits than effort. So if they see that it's good for them, but doesn't take too much effort, that can raise motivation. But the best thing to raise motivation is to make sure every task has a clear purpose in mind. So really focus on, why are we doing this? As long as you always have an answer for your students with, why are we doing this? You can increase motivation a little bit. So as much as possible, try to provide students with choices of what to read, because then they're answering the question for themselves. Why am I reading this? I picked it. I like this, so I'm going to read it. So when you can, give them a choice. Emphasize the interdependence of reading. So utilize projects where students rely on each other to ask questions and report to each other. So give them questions about tasks and texts that maybe other students are reading, so that the students have to ask each other, well, what did you read in your text? What did you read in your book? So that will increase their motivation, because they know they're not just reading to get it done. They're reading because they have to teach their friend about it. They're reading because they have to teach their other students. So other people are relying on me. I have to read this. So that's another way to increase motivation. As far as effort, make sure when you're teaching reading comprehension, try to give questions that have different levels of difficulty. So I recommended a lot of comprehension question types, like, who is the author and why does the author think this is important? those might be harder questions. So always include a sort of easy question to get students interested, like simple question. What is something you learned from this reading? Or what did you find most interesting in this reading? So ask a very simple question to start. And also design your reading tasks around a specific communication event. Don't just assign reading texts. So for older students who might be learning about email communication and how to write and respond to emails, don't just have them read an email and say, this is the format of emails. Instead, give them a task like describe what kind of response this person wants. So they already have a goal. Then they see the reading. And now the reading is not just a hurdle. It's not just an obstacle. It's something that's going to help them answer the question you give. So the question is, what kind of response does this person want? The email itself, the thing they have to read, it's not a problem. It's a tool now. So make it about the bigger task and not just the text itself.
Great, thank you. Melissa, do you have any special advice for young learners?
Yes, well, I agree with everything Rurik said, and I'm actually going to connect to what he said and show you a practical example. But before I do that, I just want to share 2 activities. So as I said, as actually mentioned before, multicultural books and books in different language are very engaging, and I usually motivate students by using these kind of books. But also, when you get to maybe grade 4 or grade 5, you can actually engage students in creating reading materials themselves. So I am a very big advocate for the balanced approach, which connects language skills. So usually, if I'm teaching reading, I'm also going to teach writing, if possible, of course, if the level of students allows it. So you can separate children in groups, and by separating them, you will get various kind of stories. Or even everybody can write 1 chapter of a bigger story. It really doesn't matter. The point is, they're going to write something collaboratively, and then you're going to shuffle the writing, and then you get authentic, original reading material, and it works every time. And the thing is, they don't even understand that they're doing reading comprehension. That's another trick in my sleeve. So usually, I never say to my students or children, now we're going to do listening, now we're going to do reading or writing, because they don't like it. So when we start doing something like that, they don't even realize how many strategies and skills they used, which I think is a very good trick. So try it in your classroom. And the last thing that Rurik said is giving choice. So I'm going to share my screen now, if that is fine. I just have to ask for the permission to share. So let me know if I can do it. Okay, so I will start sharing if that is fine. No, I can't share it. Oh, yes, I can, sorry. So I'm going to show you an example, but first I have to ask you, can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can.
So since, as I said, I'm a very big advocate for the freedom of choice and also informal education. When I do this storytelling program, and I believe this is something that you can do in school, I made a book registry. This is basically like my online library. At the end of every class, I let my students select a book they want to use. There are covers, and when you click on this little plus, every book has a super short summary. So as Rurik said, they feel like they made a choice. To me as a teacher, it really doesn't matter, because at one point in my career, I'm going to have to make a plan for this certain book. And even if you don't have, these are all books that I have in my print library, but even if you don't have funds to collect so many books, and don't be threatened by this, I collected this for years. So even if you don't, there are a lot of free websites that offer books. You can offer free books. You can also do that by using the textbook. For example, you can just separate, if you have 10 units in a textbook, take a screenshot, save it in a PDF, and let the students select the reading material if possible. Sometimes we can't do it because the curriculum says you have to do unit 1 and then unit 10. But usually, there is always something that you can do about it. So they select the book, and then next time they can't wait to see what's inside, because I don't have any kind of previews. There's only this teaser trailer. I call it a teaser, and they can select whatever they want. And also, this is an interactive made in Genial. It also has music, which is a very calm, very fairy tale-like music, and they feel fulfilled, and they feel very intrigued to read the book next time. So these are some activities and strategies that I personally use successfully. Thank you. I'm going to start sharing.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Well, now that we are getting our students motivated, we have another problem, because they try to focus on vocabulary too much than we really need to. So how can we improve reading skills and motivate them to read without focusing too much on a no vocabulary? So can you tell us some strategies that we can use? Melitza?
Okay, so I'm going to mention an approach, because I know that Rurik had one amazing activity he shared. So I hope he's going to share it today. I'm going to talk about Khalil. So personally, if students focus too much on the unknown vocabulary, we can try to introduce content language integrated learning. What does that mean? In 2020, we should definitely try to be more interdisciplinary. We should connect with other colleagues, not only because of our classroom materials or methodology or ideas, but also to just engage in some networking by creating classes in English, which are connected to other subjects. You're actually trying to avoid students not knowing too much vocabulary. For example, if you communicate with a teacher that teaches, I don't know, you're in 4th grade, you're communicating with a music teacher. Okay, and then you see what are they doing in the music class at the moment. Then you can take what I already learned in the music class and make an English lesson around it. It can be connected to reading, listening, writing, speaking, all of the skills. So by connecting the subjects, try to connect them sometimes, you can actually engage students, and then they feel like they know this. This is familiar. Wow, I'm so smart. I understand all of this. And I think this is what also motivates them a lot. So try introducing some interdisciplinary activities. It can be complicated, I know, because I know that everybody is, when you're teaching in a public school, you have to use the textbook. I know. Personally, I just don't like using textbooks too much. And I'm happy that I have the freedom to do things that are not in the textbook. But even if you are obliged to use it, you can still connect to other subjects. You just have to communicate with colleagues. So give it a shot, try. Maybe it's going to work for your class.
Okay, great. What about you, Rurik? So how can we avoid focusing too much on unknown vocabulary?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to shift the focus. And one thing to think about is that focusing on unknown vocabulary is not a problem. Worrying about unknown vocabulary is a big problem. So if your students are really focused on learning all the new words in a text and they're really good at that, there's no problem there, but that's probably not many students. So what I would do to make sure that you focus on comprehension without worrying about unknown vocabulary too much is always give preview questions. So when you provide students enough preview questions before they read, you're giving them more context about the reading. And they can use this context to make inferences before they start. So they answer the preview questions, think about the text, and they already think about what information they're going to find. And when they have this picture in their head starting to form, unknown words will be less distracted. For students who do spend too much time reading in one hand and having a dictionary in the other hand, you can change the activity for them. So instead of just reading and looking up every unknown word, tell them to underline 5 unknown words in the text. So when they're reading, they select 5 words that they just underline. While they're reading, they don't do anything with those words except underline. At the end of reading, at the end of comprehension, then go back and learn those words. Write them down in a vocabulary journal, look up the definition, or better, after they've finished reading, make a guess about those words based on their finished reading comprehension. Another thing about the preview questions is if you have very low level learners that are low for their grade level, so you think they're reading below expectations, it's okay to use those preview questions, especially if you're talking to them. Make the preview questions in Spanish and just discuss the topic a little bit in Spanish. Build up that mental image first, and then go into reading in English. So eventually you want to use the whole task in English. You want to have preview questions, vocabulary learning, reading, all of it in English. But at earlier stages, if you really think they're going to be very distracted by the unknown words, do some previewing in Spanish. And especially if you can introduce translations of those words in the discussion at the beginning, when they come to that word in the text, it might click. Oh, we were talking about, I don't know, we were talking about azucar earlier, and I don't know what sugar means, but I came across this word sugar. Maybe that discussion that I had with my teacher gives me the meaning to this word. So if you make the discussion clear enough, it can build a mental picture and help with that vocabulary. So there are little strategies to use to make students worry less about unknown words.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So let me tell you something, is that in Bogota, we have large groups of students. So usually our teachers need to manage classes with 45, 40, 50 students. So sometimes they are elementary school or secondary school, and we want to give them some recommendations. How can we teach reading to 45 or 50 students? Milica, do you have any recommendation?
My first recommendation to all of the teachers who are watching and listening to this panel, don't be afraid, because 45 to 50 students sounds scary. This is my first thing that I have to say, because I believe it's very important, since one of the reasons why reading comprehension is failing, because teachers also have this negative feeling towards it. So try to relax yourself before you start working with such a big group of students. Now, to be more practical, I would like to suggest quickly, because I'm not sure we have enough time, 3 easy activities that can work in extremely large groups. One of them is an activity based on think, pair, share. So we all know what it is. Think, have an idea, pair, discuss it, and then share with the rest of the class. Instead of thinking, you're going to do reading. Basically, it's self-explanatory. You're going to give different reading materials to the students for independent reading. Then you're going to pair them. They can pair themselves, or you can pair them based on their level if you want to include some mentorship. And finally, they can discuss in bigger groups, or they can share what is their summary, for example, if you're going to focus on summary, to the rest of the class. So read, pair, share as a kind of activity can evolve in literally anything depending on your class. Another one that I want to talk about is maybe better for young learners aged maybe 9 to 12. That's the upper section, section of young learners. So I usually use Fishbowl Discussion, and I think it's amazing because young learners really like observing other students. This is how it works. You have 3 circles of students. Okay. There is one group in the middle, that is sitting and discussing an article. This is also a variation because Fishbowl discussion usually includes a lot of talking, but we can also use it in reading. So you're going to have a group of students sitting in the middle. All of your chairs are going to be in a circle. They're going to engage in a peer-mediated reading. They're going to read and discuss. They're going to ask each other questions, whatever they want to ask. So give them the freedom. If they are older, of course. If they're younger, you need to assist. The remaining students sit in a larger circle and they watch this discussion. They have the text around them and they take notes. They can also criticize the logic of the discussion. So you're also including listening and writing and just expanding it to speak. And I think it's a very good activity. And the other circle then discusses the interaction and then sees, is this interaction even connected to the reading task, to the reading that they have in front of them? What is something that they did wrong? Can we share constructive feedback? You can write it, share it with the rest of the class. Again, it depends on what you're doing, but making these observation circles always works in various kind of classrooms, also with teenage learners. And finally, I think everybody knows what is jigsaw reading. So jigsaw reading basically means that we're going to separate certain parts of the text or even sentences if you have younger learners who just started reading, and then use different kinds of methods to combine these sections in the full text. So you can sequence them, you can play TPR games, so you can basically run in the classroom. Everybody likes to run around the classroom. So jigsaw reading basically means that you're taking little pieces of text and putting them into a big one. How are you going to do it? That's completely up to you and up to your classroom. I think, so try to use them. I'm just going to repeat what are the names of the activities. So the first one is read, pair, share. The second one is fishbowl discussion, or maybe circle discussion or reading. And the last one is jigsaw reading. This is my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. So Rurik, give us some recommendations to teach reading to large groups, please.
Sure. Militsa's ideas are all excellent. Go with them. I have one more strategy, just one more idea that works with large groups. It works with mixed level groups, and it improves motivation as well. So tying all of these issues together is create reading clubs around each text. So if you have a group of 50 students, create 10 groups of 5 students. So for each task, people are reading as a group of 5, and each person in one group has a different role. So these roles could be whatever you want them to be, and they can change for the students throughout the week. But my recommendation is 5 people in a group. You have one person who is the summarizer. So their goal is to read the text and write one paragraph that summarizes the text, and they report to their group. So no one else in the group is supposed to write a summary, only the summarizer. That's their role. They teach the other people in the group the summary. Another person is a highlighter who finds an interesting passage or a fact to discuss. So if it's fiction, maybe something that's most interesting. If it's nonfiction, maybe the most important fact or detail. So they bring that important fact. A questioner who comes up with discussion questions to connect the text to real life. So they're going to be asking their group questions. A word journaler who focuses on vocabulary. So one person focuses on new words, and they ask the rest of the group, what did these words mean? Did you have problems with these words? Let's discuss the meaning. And then one person who puts all this together. So one person who skims the text, but then their main job is to listen to everyone and create a report. So for 5 people, now you have one report that involves all of these different steps. They all work together. They all rely on each other. And you can sort of monitor the discussion between the groups, but ultimately you're looking at this report from 10 groups. So instead of 50 people, you're just looking at 10 groups now. I know this isn't easier during the current global circumstances, but with a lot of Zoom teaching going on, we do have the tool of the breakout room. So if you learn to use breakout rooms in Zoom, you can give people time, and especially time. You can give them a specific amount of time where they have to discuss their summary and their questions and their fact and their words and write a report, and then come back and they all share as a class. So using this reading club or reading group strategy can work in big classes like that.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about elementary school. So which reading skills should be developed in elementary school? Here in Colombia, our students are usually from 5 to 10 years old, and their levels are between A1 to A2.1. So Militza, you are the professional, you are the specialist. Can you give us some ideas about approaches or strategies to teaching reading in primary school? What do you suggest?
So first of all, I have a happy news for all of the teachers. You're lucky because children from Colombia learn the Latin alphabet. So you don't have this first obstacle like we do in Serbian, where children first learn the Cyrillic alphabet, and then they have to learn another one and decode a completely different language in a completely different alphabet. So when we are, if we're talking about age 5 to maybe age 7, this is the age when we are emerging readers and writers. So we are still decoding the language. So we have to start by decoding. As you can see here, I don't know if you see, but the first thing that we should teach with 5-year-olds is letter recognition and visual literacy. So as you can see here, I have some alphabets, and it basically, it's always there. The thing that helps you introducing the coding and this visual literacy is basically surrounding yourself with print. You have to have a lot of visuals around you to achieve, to decode and crack the code of the language, as I like to say. Because I'm not sure for Colombia, in Serbia, kids don't start reading in English until the grade 2. So that's approximately 8 years old. So we are still in the decoding, letter recognition. We also need to teach a lot of phonics. I don't know what is the situation with phonics in Colombia, but phonics are very important. So we need to teach the sounds, not only the spelling. So we have to teach everything, and that can be hard. So I can suggest that for if you're not very experienced in phonics, try to find a book that has structured phonics practice, and also you can join. This is I think a very good course, and it's free on Future Learn. It's called Teaching Young Learners Phonics, because if you don't decode the language, if you don't teach the phonics, the consonants, the vowels, the sounds, and then go to syllables and word formation, you're not going to achieve anything, because all of this needs to happen in order to go from an emerging reader to a more fluent reader. So these are some very very crucial skills you need to teach children aged 5 to 10. And also it depends, it can also depend on the fluency of the children in their native language. So sometimes the children who are fluent in their native language maybe grasp another language more quickly. If you know a lot of vocabulary in your native language, it is going to be easier to transfer to another. So the skills that we should teach is definitely decoding, and then go with fluency through recognition and phonics. This is my personal advice, and also based on a lot of research. And good luck. That's all.
Thank you. Well, now we are gonna move to some recommendations, of course, for secondary school. So Rurik, you are the professional, you are the specialist. And now I'm gonna tell you about a little bit our context. So our students are usually from 10 or 11 years old to 16, 17. And their levels, they can be between level A1 to B1 or B2. It depends on the school. So please give us some recommendations about strategies, approaches. So how can we give them more opportunities to practice reading, and to what kind of activities do you suggest?
Sure.
Thank you.
So when learners are getting older and getting into high school or secondary school, we make more assumptions about their first language literacy. So we make more assumptions about how much reading they're doing in science class or how much reading they're doing in math class. They should be doing a lot of reading without realizing they're doing a lot of reading. So you want to focus on these skills that they need to use, where reading is just one part. So focus on summarizing skills. So especially with older students, focusing on that ability to take a big text and get the main idea is very important. Think about the purpose for reading. Again, I mentioned this a few times. The purpose for reading is very important. So don't start a task just with, you need to read this text. Think about another key word for the purpose. Is it interpret, evaluate, relate, critique, opinion, question? So what is the key purpose for reading? So give them a guiding goal before they read. So especially with older students, they need to know what they're going to do with the information. So once I'm done reading, as a learner and a reader, I always want to know, once I'm done reading, what's the point? If the point is just to take a test or answer a question, I'm not so interested. But if the point is to create my own opinion, or if I get a chance to say why I thought this wasn't a good article, or this author doesn't know what they're talking about, or my opinion and my experience is very different, if they have a chance to say those kind of things, they will be more motivated to read. So understanding that older students are independent people and they want to express opinions, they want to have a purpose. So for each reading, emphasize the purpose of the reading and not just, this is a reading about ecology, or this is a reading about education, or whatever the topic is. So focus instead on the purpose and the goal. So some quick strategies that you might take, again, give students as much choice as possible. Make it an assignment for students to go find an online news source or even personal interest magazine, whether it's news or entertainment or whatever their specific hobby is. Make the first assignment for them to go find an English language source that they can read online. So then every once in a while, you give them a purpose. You tell them, go find an article and relate it to your personal life. So they don't have a goal that's about the reading. They have a goal that's about their own personal life. And they find their goal is to find the text, read the text, and explain how it relates to their personal life. So giving students as much choice to pick the types of texts and making these general activities that work for everyone's different interests is important. Another strategy, especially with older students, is to focus on critical thinking activities. So again, I'm a big fan of teachers coming up with lots of questions for each text. So focus some activities around questions like, what do I need to do now? So show your students an email from a school administrator. So what questions do they need to ask when they see this email? Like, I got this email. Is it an advertisement? Am I in trouble? Like, what is this email for? So give them questions like, what is this email? Do I need to respond? Do I think other people got this email? And then read to comprehend the whole text and write a reply as well. So making these activities about critical thinking, asking yourself as a reader lots of questions. Encourage your students to ask questions a lot while they read. And you as a teacher, provide them with lots of questions about the reading.
Okay, thank you, Rurik. Okay, now we have full of advices for our children and our teenagers. And we are gonna pass to another question, very interesting, because it is talking about today's students. So it is said that today's generations read more because they use social media a lot. How can we teach reading with technology to make our classes more engaging? And what materials and activities do you suggest? I was listening to Rurik and he said advertisements or emails. Sometimes we believe that reading is only reading literature, but there are other genres that we can use in class. And before you continue speaking, I want to tell you that we are very happy because we have people seeing us from Serbia and from Antioquia, from Medellin. There are teachers from other cities and besides Bogota, of course. So we say hi to all of them. And Milica, can you please continue answering our question? This is about how can we include technology, or how can we motivate these generations into reading?
Okay. So, of course, I have a lot of ideas there. And for this one, I would like to share my screen if possible, because I want to share some screenshots. And I think it's maybe easier if people see it visually. So I'm going to share if that's fine. Okay. So for this question, I actually put some screenshots from my own classroom. I suggest using three tools and platforms. One of them is Edmodo or Class Dojo. So Edmodo can be used for older students, older young learners. It's very unusual to call them older young learners, but they are older in terms of very young learners. And Class Dojo for the young learners and very young learners. How can you use it? For example, if you have older young learners, you just have to remember that they all use social media. And both Edmodo and Class Dojo are learning management systems who are social media based. What does that mean? For example, take this example. In this example, I posted a task. So we discussed getting married online in time of COVID-19. So this is what Rurik said. We are connecting the reading tasks to actual real life. So this is what makes it engaging. Then you can share a link with anything you select, and just request the students to write in the comments. Students like commenting because it reminds them on Facebook. So you can use any kind of question, just make sure it's short. So they're going to read something, they're going to do a little bit of writing, but make it short, because if it's longer, in my experience, they usually skip it and it's left unanswered, and then it's just a waste of time. So make it short, include some GIFs. If you're already going to use social media, make it visually engaging. Another one is insert learning. And I think this one is definitely more for teenage and older young learners. How does it work? Instant learning is an annotation tool that you install your browser, and then you can annotate every article on the internet. The only trick is that the students have to have this installed in their browser as well. So it doesn't work in low resource communities. I have to slow down. We're losing time, so I'm pretty fast. Sorry. So it doesn't work if you're teaching in a low resource community. Unfortunately, they have to have a computer and they have to install it. But if you have the resources, you can you can use insert learning. With insert learning, you can assign a certain article to your class, connect it to Google Classroom. You can highlight everything. You can put sticky notes right in the page. You can put questions with multiple choice right there in the text, which I find really interesting because when you do that, you're giving them questions as they read, so they don't forget. Sometimes it's easier to answer right away. You can put a discussion topic, and you can even put a video, so you can connect it to many different kinds of media. Finally, the last thing that I want, yes, of course, you can connect it with other apps. Finally, this is an example that I do and use with young learners. I'm going to put a full screen. Just please confirm that you can hear me and see me. I hear a little bit of unusual noises.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Listen to you.
So, of course. So this is connected to storytelling. Again, I'm repeating myself, I know, but I'm a very big advocate for storytelling. When it comes to storytelling, I usually use Genially, and this is a lesson made in Genially for a picture book. So what do? You start by, of course, introducing, as Rurik said, you need to give them a reason to read. And this is also true for young learners. They have to have a certain motivation to keep reading. Not every book is going to have a typical child or personality they can identify with. So we need to do a lot of pre-teaching. So as you can see here, we have vocabulary, connecting, being an animal, chatting, rhyming, sequencing, making a mask, and then doing some STEM activities. So it's really interdisciplinary. Let me just show you. So first of all, we have we have translations in Serbian and English. Why? Because I wanted the children to be able to do it independently. They have to play. You can't hear it now, I'm sorry. And then click on the right animal. After completing the vocabulary, now we're the nouns, we're going to some action verbs, and we have a lot of practical GIFs here. Then we're doing a little quiz. So we're doing the pre-teaching through Genially. And for example, if the children miss your lesson, they can do it by themselves. They can watch the recording and they can complete this completely independently. I just want to show you a few other activities, which are scaffolded activities for storytelling. Of course, we have some matching here. And then we have a very interactive activity with click and spin and mimicking the animal. We are still in the pre-teaching section, and we can move them. So if you use Genial, you can create virtually everything as long as you get creative. So you can create any kind of activity for both young learners and, of course, teenage learners if you want to. So these are the three suggestions that I have for you. LMS, such as Edmodo or Class Dojo, then Insert Learning for annotation, and then Genially for any kind of interactive activities. I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you for, okay.
Okay, Milica, thanks a lot. People and teachers are asking us about the link of these activities. Can we have access to those activities?
Yes, I'm going to share you the link of the post where I actually put all of these activities, and you're free to use them in your classroom if you want to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Rory, your turn.
Sure. So yeah, so social media and technology is interacting with reading in interesting ways now. So the question is, how do we make use of that as teachers? So like Milica demonstrated lots of awesome technology tools we can use and how to make technology more engaging. Another thing that I want to highlight is using the more authentic social media tools and seeing how those can be part of the reading learning experience. So a big issue nowadays with social media is being advertised to and having lots of information that might not be true come around on the internet. So not just teaching specific types of media, but teaching ways to engage with the social media world. So I recommend, especially for teaching older students, teaching a lesson on being critical thinkers, learning how to decide if something is fact or fiction on the internet, learning to find out if a news article has a secret advertisement in it somewhere. So being very internet conscious learners and teaching skills that aren't just about reading a book, but about being aware and being critical on the internet, because there's a lot of new reading that happens, especially with advertising. So you can make this about looking at an advertisement and reading it. What are they advertising? Is this a good product? Do I want it? Or looking at an advertisement as something more critical, like is this who is this trying to sell to? Why am I seeing this advertisement? So that kind of thing. Another simple task with new media would be a pen pal task. So having students email each other. So you set up 2 students to email each other in English, and they always CC you. And so this might seem like a speaking task kind of turned into a reading task. They're going to use email to write to each other about current events or news or their daily life. And you get to see the discussion between them in English. So it's a little bit of writing, a little bit of speaking, because it's more of a spoken tone in pen palship. It's not really essay writing. It's very dialogue-like, but it still involves that sort of eye-text connection that you need for reading. It's still part of the extensive reading work. So I think setting up email pen pal tasks between students is a really good way to activate technology and reading skill.
Great. Thanks a lot, Milica and Rurik. Unfortunately, time is short, so we are reaching the end of this. And to close this panel, which is very interesting, and our teachers are very happy with your ideas and all your advices, we have one final question. So usually teachers are overwhelmed with many activities, responsibilities, you know, the quarantine, distance learning, remote teaching. They have had to learn a lot of things. And sometimes to include reading is not so easy. Sometimes we believe it is really hard. So please give us 3 final recommendations to make reading a possible skill to teach, to learn, and evaluate in our daily classes, in our daily days. So only 3 final recommendations. And before I'm leaving, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot for sharing all your knowledge. It has been very, very interesting conversation. So Milica, do you want to give us the 3 final recommendations?
So I'm going to fit everything in one sentence. Dramatization, the balanced approach, so reading and writing at the same time, and a lot of collaborative activities. These are my final 3 recommendations.
Great, thank you, Milica. What about you, Rurik? 3 final recommendations.
I don't know if I can be as short as Milica, but so my first recommendation is network with other reading teachers. So I know one of the most difficult things, especially with what we recommended, as far as giving people choice and motivating and finding purpose in reading, those are all very difficult. Network with other reading teachers to get a shared library of reading materials. So don't be afraid to ask other teachers. Don't be afraid to advertise that you found a really good text online. Everyone needs more reading materials. So find other teachers that can help build up a shared library of reading material, and also reading activities. So the kind of comprehension questions that you ask with each one. So please share your texts that you find online. Use simple.wikipedia.org, the simple English Wikipedia. That's usually Wikipedia pages about critical topics, broad topics, but condensed into very short, simple pages. So that's a great place to get resources that are nonfiction, maybe for older students, but you can put those in a library of reading material. Second, always encourage discussion and peer feedback, peer reporting. Get students to talk to each other about their reading as much as possible. So that's going to be the easiest way to increase motivation, even if it's just a little bit, is to make sure students know they have to talk to each other about the reading. And then always keep in mind the purpose of reading. So reading is one small part, the actual text reading is one small part of a larger task to understand something. So it involves motivation and reading and learning and informing and sharing. These are all different activities that are part of one task. Reading the text is one small part. So make sure you always put reading in a bigger purpose. So that's my third.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Rurik. Thank you so much, Milica. It has been a pleasure for me to be here with you. So, Marta, this is the time to say goodbye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jamie. Well, this has been a very interesting workshop, and I hope that all our Colombian teachers have enjoyed it. Thank you very much to Rurik and to Milica. I've learned a lot of new things, new ideas. I remembered all the teaching I did for reading comprehension, which is very important in our country, since if we don't read, our other skills will not be well performed, right? So in terms of just trying to wrap up this moment, because it has been very, very thoughtful and very interesting. The most important thing that Milica said was that all kids learn differently. And that is the first thing we need to always remember when we are organizing our lesson plans. Motivation, as Rurik was saying and has always emphasized on, is very important. And it's not only for reading purposes. Motivation and motivating our students is very important always. So this is we had a lot of new websites shared with us. Milica shared with us her link, and it is in our Facebook chat. We also shared links from the National Ministry of Education. They have free book libraries that our teachers can use. So please go to the Ministries of Education website and use those links. We have more than 100 titles there from readers of different publishers that have given free access to teachers and students to read those books. So we need to encourage our students to keep on reading during these vacations. And I would like to close by not only thanking the British Council for organizing this important workshop. The British Council has always brought good and interesting people. I would like to thank Milica and Rurik for your presentations, your time, for sharing what you do every day. That is so important for us. And we are, the purpose of these panels is that we share with people from around the world. We had people from different places in Colombia, and we had people from Serbia. So watching this presentation. So we're very happy that that we can not only help our teachers in Bogota, but around the country. And that's what British Council does. They organize these good and interesting workshops. Please remember to fill in the evaluation form that is in the link in Red Académica. It's important for us to keep on improving our workshops and to know what you think, if we keep on doing these workshops or not. We thank all the teachers that have been present here. And I would like to personally thank Red Académica, Jaime Benavides and his team for helping us out with this workshop and for the realization in our Facebook Live, as well as Jamie Herrera, our academic coordinator, and the district plan, the bilingual district plan in Bogota, Luisa Martinez, who has been chatting with all our teachers in Facebook, and Daniela, Diego, who is not here today with us, but he is present in our chat, and Juliana Echeverry, who has been organizing all these events for our sessions. So thank you very much. And we invite you to our third and final panel next Tuesday, 9 a.m. on assessment literacy, key principles and practical applications for better teaching and learning. This workshop is going to be focused on assessment, so we hope that you all can join us next Tuesday. So see you until next Tuesday and have a good week. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.